So welcome everyone to another Monday meetup. This is Monday, March the 15th, and I'm joined by Christiane and Haley. We were just getting to know each other and talking a little bit about our backgrounds and trying to figure out what we're going to chat about this evening. And I think what we might do is chat a little bit about the MPK programs. We were talking about U of T's program, we were talking about Brock's program, and since both of you are into this experience, what did you find interesting, helpful about the master's program compared to your undergrad? I'm curious about, I guess, firstly, why you thought about the master's. And then secondly, I won't put you on the spot, but I'll say, what have you been able to do with the master's degree that you may not have been able to do with the undergrad degree, do you think? And maybe Christiane can speak to that because I know Haley just took a bite of food.
That's funny. I'm trying to remember what the questions were.
Oh, first one is, yeah, about why did you consider going into the MPK following your undergrad?
So for me, I kind of did the undergrad not really knowing what I wanted to do. Looking back, if I had known exactly what I wanted to do, there were like specific courses I would have taken. I would have taken like aging courses. I would have taken taken advantage of like York. They do have a I think it's like an exercise physiologist stream or something like that. And like I wish like I would have done that. I could have actually been certified to become a CSEP personal trainer after one of the courses. So but I didn't really know. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was just kind of taking like courses that sounded interesting. There wasn't really like a plan. And then kind of I hit, third year and I don't really know what I want to do. And I was like, oh shoot, everybody's applying to PT, OT. And so I wasn't really sure. And then I heard about the MPK program and, the idea of like, try like working as like a kinesiologist. And I was like, that sounded really interesting. So that's kind of why I wanted to do the MPK program, is just to build like those practical skills that I felt like I didn't really take advantage of when I was at York.
So interesting. What are some of the practical skills that you learned in your program?
In the MPK program, I did it was really interesting because we had a clinical assessment course taught by a sports medicine doctor. We had a behavioral course taught by a social worker, sociocultural taught by one of their sociology professors who's really entertaining. And there was a business course, to be honest. Unofficially, I wasn't a huge fan of the business course. And then just like evidence-based practice, and there was like a lot of different courses that I felt was helpful. The only problem I felt is that like I got into the mode that it was like, okay, I'm just trying to like finish the course. I feel like I didn't really digest everything I actually learned until like later.
Which kind of makes sense, right? It takes a little while for anything that you do post-grad to kind of gel with your experience. It needs a little marination time before you realize what you actually learned and then how to actually apply it. So, hi, Elise. We're talking about MPK programs and master's experiences. So glad you're here because I can't speak to that, but you can as well.
Yeah.
So, Christiane just did the U of T program and Haley is a Brock program.
Oh, okay, great. That's great. Yeah. And and then I went to UOIT and did my master's of health science degree. But mine was a thesis-based or research-based master's. So I looked at Nordic pole walking with the cancer population. And I found it really beneficial because it gave me a different way again of or a deeper understanding of how to look at the research and analyze it for myself. And so now when I'm going to look at studies and applying that to my practice, I find it easier than I did before. So Yeah,
Oh,
that
that's
was
great.
one of the big things that I got out of it, I would say. So
That's really good, really good. And so, Haley, how are you enjoying the Brock program? Is it a 1-year program?
Yeah, it is.
Mhm.
I actually really like it. I actually just stumbled upon it last year. After I finished my undergrad at Waterloo, I kind of took 2 years off to have a mental break from school, trying to figure out
I can't
what I
imagine.
wanted. Yeah, what I wanted to do, because I wasn't coming out of my undergrad. I wasn't really sure what you can kind of do with a kinesiology degree. So I worked for 2 years, and then I just happened to stumble upon the MPK program, and I like that there's a lot of practical parts about the program for us to be able to apply our knowledge. One thing I do really like about the one at Brock is I'm allowed to specialize with certain populations with our different practicums or placement opportunities that we get each term. So I specifically want to work with chronic conditions when I come out of school. So I have the opportunity to work last term with people who had neuromuscular disease. And then this term I'm working with people who have cardiovascular disease. So it's nice to have different types of populations we can work with. So I really like the program. It kind of sucks that it's online right now. But hopefully in the summer, if we can get more of that practical experience.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Christiane, is the U of T program a 1-year or a 2-year?
It's a year and a half. It's
Oh yeah, right.
August to December.
August to December. So it's so interesting, right? Because you have 1- and 2-year programs. You have thesis-based, you have practical based or like course based. And I was thinking about this the other day. I know that quite possibly a master's degree may be a requirement to sit the Arkin exam in the future. And it may be that, like Haley was saying, you would have to choose perhaps a specialty. And the only way you would be able to practice in that specialty is if you were able to focus on that in your postgraduate work. And then secondly, if you actually wrote, let's say, a specialty portion of the exam, like an addendum to the exam. So I'm just wondering if that's what is coming down the pipes. And I'm not sure whether it's the college that would drive that or the government that would drive that or other healthcare professions that would drive that. So that's something that we'll have to watch for in the future. Now, I think that might take quite some time before that moves into place, because I think what would likely have to happen first is practical exams across the board. And then looking at the education requirements for the Arkin. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Has anyone heard any college rumblings about any decisions that may have been decided upon, discussed, talked about, rumored? No, nothing. No.
But I mean, the physios and I don't think the OTs do any sort of like, do they have like specialized like PTs for chronic disease or PT for pediatrics? Do they have something
Well,
like that?
they do have postgraduate certifications that they go through, postgraduate training that they go through. But I'm not sure if they have particular specializations. I knew they do for pelvic health, for example. Yeah, they actually do. They would have pediatrics because they go through gerontology. They'd go through rounds as part of their education as well. So they would have specialties. And I'm not quite sure, though, whether they would have to specialize in their exams. That's a question I will ask to find out if they actually have to kind of register to write a particular section of the exam or an add-on to a qualification exam and see how that works. Interesting, interesting. So do you find that the master's degrees are helping you focus on a more particular population, or are you getting, like Elise was saying, a general appreciation for the research behind the different client groups that you would like to work with, or a little bit of both, maybe? Any thoughts on that? Question is way too big. Let's try again. So when you're thinking about the clients that you'd like to work with, are you selecting your master's programs based on a particular client base that you want to work with? Or is that just not really on your radar and you're just looking for more generalized practical experience?
I think for me at least, again, if I could kind of go back and redo it, I would have taken like a year or two off after the undergrad to really figure out what I wanted to do. Because I felt that I jumped into the master's to figure out what I wanted to do. But because it's so quick, it's done in a year and a half. That like in the process you're trying to figure out what you want to do, but then by the time you figure it out, you've already gone through all your placements and your courses. So like to me that was unfortunate, because I know that when I first got in for the MPK program, the first year you do like one placement, but it's like part-time. And so I did it with kids with special needs because I wasn't like really sure. But if I could have gone back, I would have done the chronic disease one, because that's what I ended up wanting to do. But obviously I didn't know that when I first got in.
Yeah, I wouldn't really be too worried about that, because I think that the idea with going to school is that it gives you that broad experience. So then you have exposure in either practicums or in real life to figure out what client bases you like to work with. And I think for a lot of us in our undergrad, I can certainly speak for me at Waterloo, the only specialized courses we had were the two in sports medicine. So working with athletes was really all that we were exposed to at the time. And it was assessment and athletic treatment, really. So electrical modalities, taping, those kinds of things was what we were exposed to. We weren't really looking at balance, function, anything like that that would apply to a broader range of populations. Very interesting. What were some of your, yeah.
I was just gonna say with the thesis one, like, I mean, like I said, it's so focused on research, obviously, but then you do end up taking, at least where I was, you took like a self-study course on, or like on your topic. So like I had an in-depth course on the biology of cancer. So I have a much deeper understanding of like
Oh.
how cancer develops at a cellular level, even by taking that course. So you have an opportunity also to kind of take something, get a deeper knowledge in a certain area of your choosing, basically, I think. And the one thing that I have always thought about after doing it now, like I haven't obviously had time right now, but at some point, like I don't really think I want to go on and do my PhD, although I said that about my master's too.
I know.
But I don't think that I want to do that. But I wouldn't mind, like now that I have some, is my connection bad?
Oh, it'll come back. You can keep talking because we can hear you. Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. So although now that I have connections like with some of the professors and my supervisor and stuff, like I wouldn't mind doing some research somehow in my practice, as part of my practice somehow. Even like I've thought that I really had a good supervisor and we have a really great relationship, and I could see that in the future, like maybe I would collaborate with her on something.
Oh, true. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
You can contribute your research in her lab.
Yeah, somehow something, like, because I mean, I have all the practical experience and she has all the research experience.
Right.
So, so that was kind of a neat thing that I thought came out of it, although I haven't been able to do that right now yet.
That's okay. That's you're doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
You're momming.
Yeah.
How did you decide on your program, Elise? Because I know that was many, many conversations that you and I had, and we actually sat down with clients of ours who said, masters, both of you, masters, more education. Do you remember that dinner?
Yeah.
And
I mean, the reason that one of the big reasons that I did my master's, I guess, is because I thought that having more credentials would be good long term.
Sure.
And that when people saw, my name with the letters beside it, that it would mean something.
Mhm.
And how I chose UOIT. Well, a friend of mine was going there. And so then I asked her about it, and she
Right.
actually connected me with a professor there who ended up being like a co-supervisor with my supervisor for my project, actually. So I had two supervisors.
Oh, right.
And connected me with him. And he was, I think, he was a more senior professor, whereas the professor that I was partnered with was more new to UOIT. So that's why I think they've also partnered together.
Mhm.
But it was basically based, I guess, on also how I got along with my potential supervisors. I think
Yeah.
that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
If you have, common interests, if you can work well together, and she's like, I consider her like a mentor of mine, really, like, for a
Mhm.
lot of different reasons, like life aspects, even, life and academic. So yeah, it's kind
That's
of
you
neat.
really got lucky. You really chose well.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, you had a good experience.
Yeah.
It's interesting then to see the differences because we're seeing the professional masters, which it looks like are 1 year, 18 months ish, I think, for the most part. And then the 2 year thesis based masters. Um, and so I wonder what might be, if there might be a requirement coming up that it has to be one or the other in order to write your arcane exam, or if they say a master's and you would have to have your program approved before writing the exam. Not sure how that might look, but to all of your points, I think it makes sense to get some life experience, get some clinical experience, and then consider going back so that you have the ability to focus on whatever it is you want to study, whether it's the profession itself and getting a broader base of practical experience, or like Elise, if you have a really particular interest because of the clients that you've been working with and you just want to dive a little bit deeper.
Are there other professional programs, like, other practical, like other than Brock and U of T? I'm not really familiar with what ones there are.
Yeah, what other ones do you know about?
I think
Lakehead
in
has one.
I think in
Mhm.
Ontario, it's just Brock and U of T for the research I've done, but again, I could be wrong.
I think so. Yeah, it's the only two that I've heard of. And I think it's funny because U of T when I did it, kept bragging that like, oh, we're the first one to ever do it. And I'm just like, no, I think Brock's been doing it for a while.
Yeah, Lakehead was doing it earlier as well.
Ooh, maybe that's what I don't know. Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I'm just taking a look here. Yeah, U of T and Brock come up really high in the rankings here of a professional masters. Lakehead is a 1 year program. And it's very interesting because a lot of the schools are looking for ways to keep kinesiologists with them. And the practical based masters is really helpful, I think, because as all of us know, we come out of school saying, I have no idea what the field is all about, what kind of career would be an option for me. And so when you have this professional based masters, you think, that sounds great. They're going to help me land a career if I invest another year to 18 months or so. And then it may make sense that, like what Elise did, you take 8 to 10 years and then go back where you've really experienced a broad range of clients and you can go super deep into one particular client base. And who knows, maybe we'll all go back time and time again for different masters in different areas without feeling the need to go to the PhD to do the really in-depth research. Or maybe you decide to step out of the profession a little bit and go to invest that 4 years or 5 years into a PhD and change the course of your career or start up a program specifically directed to a client base. Lots of options, lots of options.
Too many options.
Yeah, I know. Too
Sometimes.
many options.
Yeah,
Too
like I
many
feel
options.
that's the overwhelming thing. I know at my workplace there's always like a co-op student, and yeah, a lot of them have mentioned that. It's like, yeah, like we have no idea what to do because there are like different things that we could do, and it's
Mhm.
just hard to figure out what they actually want to do.
Yeah, yeah. That is really interesting. I was talking with the CKA and asking if they could do a broad, in-depth look at all of the Canadian programs, just so they could point out what schools were stronger in some areas than others and what programs were available and what researchers were involved in different active research programs. That task would be way too big for an association that size, but you can see how it would be super helpful to say, okay, in Canada, province by province, here are all the college and university programs, and here's some of the specialties. Because just like us, they also have to have their ideal student. So who are they looking for so that they can provide a really great experience for a kin undergrad or a kin grad who's ready to go a little bit further?
Mhm.
So some programs are starting to do that now, but I think for the most part, they've got the general undergrad, and then they're starting to get a bit more streamlined with the masters. And then of course, with the particular researchers for PhD candidates, that's where things go a little bit more in depth over time. Interesting. Anything else we want to chat about in terms of master's programs? I have a question. Elise, did Matt finish his? Is he still working away at his?
No, he ended up not finishing his master's. He got his postgraduate degree. Sorry, I'm sure you
Okay.
can hear the kids screaming in the back. I have to go check on that in a minute. But he got his post graduate degree, or like diploma, it was
Yeah.
at UBC.
Right.
And then he was halfway through the master's program. But the one problem that he really found, which he told them about in the end, because he really didn't necessarily want to leave it, but they require you to do full-time school.
Oh.
And
Oh,
so for
wow.
someone who's working, it was really difficult. And yeah, he just couldn't do it. Like, he was a new dad, he was like trying to
Yeah.
manage work and do courses, and it was just, yeah, impossible. So he ended up dropping out, and he told them, like, if you guys had a part-time option, I would have stayed on and finished off my degree, because I think he'd done most of the courses. All that was left was he had a research project, basically, which
Oh, wow.
isn't nothing. I mean, it's like a mini thesis, right?
Right.
But yeah, he was taking, I can't remember what the title of their program is exactly, but it's out of the kinesiology department, and
Yeah.
you end up with a master. You do the do you remember what, I guess you wouldn't know what it's called.
No, it was really super interesting.
It's like a high performance sport diploma or
Yeah.
something like that, and then you can go into a master's option after that once you've done the diploma part. And not everyone does. There's some people who are in the diploma that are not, like, that's not their, I don't even know if I don't know what the qualifications are to get in the program, but they're not necessarily all headed towards the masters.
Right.
But I think I also, like, I'm not sure how many graduates they have from that program, because again, the full-time thing, like,
Yeah.
who's gonna,
Exactly.
and most of the people attending that program is, I think everyone there is a coach, like, or they're like, they're employed. They're not just a student who's gone into this program right out of high school or something. They're all employed. So yeah, so it makes it really challenging, and everyone's from different sports. So he was the only golf coach, but there's people from all different sports, and then even some strength and conditioning specialists in it too, actually.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
It's really too bad, because if you want to draw that caliber of student, you have to be adaptable with how you're able to structure their study.
Yeah, and to pay like full-time tuition, and even,
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense. It didn't
Yeah.
work. It
Yeah.
didn't work. So yeah, so then he now Of course, he's looking at other stuff still.
I figured.
He's even looked at like masters of sports psychology or some other things. Yeah.
Oh, that would
Well,
come in
now
handy with.
maybe even online, like doing some sort of a master's program online.
Mhm, mhm.
So we'll see. But yeah, if they're
It's
trying to appeal to
really,
people, like even in these kinesiology programs, like, you know, if you're trying to
yeah.
appeal to people who are working and stuff, it makes sense to have a part-time option. And
Mhm,
yeah, so
yeah.
Yeah, because
That's
I don't
exactly what I
know.
was gonna say.
Because I know that like the two, like when I did it, there were two people that were working, well, like who weren't like fresh out of school. And yeah, they both really struggled doing the course full time. Because especially the unfortunate thing was our classes were usually like middle of the day
Yeah,
because our placements would be like before or after. But it's just that kind of just, even for me, I had a hard time even like working because just like, okay, well, like my classes are from like 12 to 4, like I can't really like do much
yeah.
work outside of this.
yeah,
With
yeah.
my thesis, I did full time the first year, I think it was, and then after that, I ended up going part time, which didn't matter because like I could be working on my thesis as much or as little as I wanted to, basically paying a full time part time tuition. And I did know it was going to take, like, it was going to take me longer. I think it took me 3 years instead of 2 years then.
Mhm.
Um, but I was working throughout the entire time too. So.
Yeah, yeah. Even when you were doing the first year full time,
Yeah, I cut
you were
back on my
working.
hours,
Yeah,
but I was still, yeah, working a significant amount. So,
yeah, yeah.
mhm.
So how about your program, Haley? Is it full time or can you work part time?
You can do part-time. I don't think there's anyone in my program right now who's doing it part-time. I think we're all doing the course full-time, but I think there is an option when you do apply so that you
Mhm.
can work if you wanted to.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
but the only issue with that is, like it was mentioned, the way our classes are scheduled, and then you have your placements. So like some days,
Oh,
like I'll have classes early in the morning, and then I go straight into placement until like late at night. So it's kind of hard to balance work while also being in school to still get the marks that you want to be able to graduate, but
right,
still be able to have an income.
right, right. So you almost have to take a step back from work for a year, shift into really part-time mode, and then move on from there. Somehow I ended up with two cats on me. So that is really interesting. And I think that there's a lot of kinesiologists who are pursuing master's degrees because they feel that they may be more in demand clinically. And that could be because they have those practical experiences. They just are more comfortable working with clients. They're more comfortable working with rehab colleagues. So it just makes it a little bit easier to actually assimilate into a clinical position. I'm not sure if there's any post-grad MPK type programs in ergonomics or clinical disability management. Do you know anything about that, or whether or not the masters in professional kinesiology programs are really focused on the clinical side of kinesiology?
I mean, there might be. I feel like I did see something about disability management or like ergonomics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure they exist. But what I
Yeah.
found to be an issue in terms of the MPK program is that because like a lot of the kin jobs that are usually posted,
Mm-hmm.
like right now, it's just like there's such a dichotomy. It's either like dollar above minimum wage kin job
Mm-hmm.
or the ones that pay really well, but it's just like, oh, you need like 6 years of experience to be able to apply. So it's just like it leaves you with such a weird feeling when you graduate because there's like, okay, like what do I do? And it feels
Right.
weird to apply to like a job that's paying $1 above minimum wage with a master's degree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The challenge, I think, for a lot of people is possibly moving into hospital-based jobs, corporate positions, where your kinesiology degree would place you in a unionized environment where you'd be in a pay scale or a pay grade. And so that might be helpful, kind of define benefits and payment plans through that kind of hierarchy of pay. Or you would work in the manufacturing industry in the health and safety area, working in claims management, ergonomics, return to work expertise. And those jobs tend to pay differently than the physiotherapy assistant type initial roles. And that's where there's a lot of tension for us, because we want great clinical roles, but we almost have to hold out for those clinical roles, or specifically focus on looking to long-term care centers or hospital-based jobs where you can command higher than minimum wage, significantly higher, or look to private practice. And private practice can be a challenge. I don't know if you're taught anything about private practice in the MPK program. So you taught how to set yourself up and get going with your own business?
I know in the spring, I am taking a business course. It's required for us in our program at Brock.
Oh, good.
I don't know too much about the business course yet, but I'm assuming they're going to teach us a little bit about how to start a business. I know one of the placements I'm at right now, it is private practice. So I have been asking questions about how do you start a business, because I never had the opportunity in my undergrad to learn about anything related to business. And I am interested in going that route, since I don't really want to come out of school and work that minimum wage job and then feel discouraged for going to school for this long.
Yeah.
Which is good. I know, as I was talking before, with the MPK program at Brock as well, we're also required to take an ergonomics course. So they give us more of a broad spectrum of everything else we have. And then there's also placements in ergonomics, if that's also something that people are interested in learning about.
Okay, so you've got a pretty broad background. That's really good. That's great. And then, Christiane, you mentioned there was one business course at U of T.
Yeah. So I wasn't really a big fan, because it was interesting, because by that point, both my parents own their own business, and I do have that kind of business background.
Right.
And it just felt like the majority of the time she was talking about like getting angel investors and like how to get loans and stuff. And I was just like, okay, but have you actually talked about like how to actually set up a business, rather than, how to finance it. But I'm just like, yeah, but there's more to running a business than how to finance it. So because I'm actually a really big fan of like Jim Collins, his books on business. He basically studies successful businesses and kind of like compares them. It's like, okay, he wrote books like How the Mighty Fall, so like how really great businesses end up failing, Good to Great, Built to Last, Great by Choice. So like he wrote a lot of really good books for business. If you're interested, I really recommend looking him up. Like I felt like it didn't really like help me that much in terms of like what I actually wanted to do at the time.
It's tricky because a lot of people, I think, learn by doing and learn from falling on their faces and then picking themselves back up and figuring out how to redirect. And so you can do that if you have a cushion, if you have high risk tolerance, but not a lot of people are in that position. I mean, you need to, out of the gate, make some money to live on, to pay back student loans. One of our students says to get adulting, to make that shift into the other next phase of your life. And if you want to own a home and have a family, you're making different choices, I think, from time to time than you might otherwise be. So there's also teaching people how to think through those choices, to say, what are my options? And if I had to reverse engineer my life to say, what do I ultimately want? And then work backward to figure out, well, how do I get there? And then you just start breaking off chunk by chunk and moving on through that path. So I know Jim Collins talks a lot about not being afraid to fail, and it's you have to fail to innovate. You have to fail to grow. You can't be successful all the time because it means you're not growing, you're not testing, you're not trying. But when you're starting your own business, you have to figure out where that tolerance is. So when I get to this point, I need to make a decision. I'm going to carry this idea this far, but if I'm not getting the returns I want, then I need to pivot. So again, putting that cushion of safety around yourself to say, for the next year, I'm going to do this. For the next 3 years, I'm going to do this. But I need to put markers along the way to say, if I'm not here by this time, I already know I need to go to the left or the right to make different choices. And so that you've got those points clearly defined with the next actions in place, or a mentor or trusted supervisors or friends or family that you can go to say, okay, it's all right, let me help you through the next phase.
Yeah, there's another book that I would recommend. It's called Business Boutique. It's basically, yeah, like how to start a business for women. So that was also really helpful because it literally is like a step-by-step guide of like, okay, how to set a goal, how to make sure it's reasonable. It's like, hey, I want to like, I don't know, attract 1 client a week or something, like it was really helpful. And they're like, attached to that, you can always sign up for like the Business Academy where like, she does talks and there's like videos and stuff, which I thought was actually really helpful.
Oh, that's good. Thank you for that. I will.
It's interesting because every the enrollment for the academy is, I think, twice a year. And ever since I started back early COVID, she does this challenge where she's like, you pay like, I think like $100 for like the 6 months, but she does this like $150 challenge of like, hey, I want you to actually like earn back the money that you spent on the course. And it was pretty cool, like seeing like a lot of the women that they like managed to do really well in it.
It's a great idea to do because it might be an hour or 2 of professional time, or it could be developing a product that's $29 and how many of those do you need to sell and how do you go about selling those things in order to make your investment back. So I like those kinds of challenges because it does fuel that creativity, gets you really thinking about it, and it's time limited, which is important as well. Yeah, before the end of the course you have to earn back your tuition. Yeah. Very interesting. Okay, we have a few minutes here, and Christiane had some interesting client questions, and I wouldn't mind brainstorming this with all of you here. So which
one do we, yeah,
you pick.
Spinal stenosis or GI problems? I guess the spinal stenosis, because I guess I posted about the GI one in the group. So the spinal stenosis senior guy, he has lumbar spinal stenosis. Let me remember. So I think it's right hip replacement, left knee replacement. And now is having trouble like lifting his leg, the side with the replacement. He's having trouble like lifting the leg, especially so now he's even like walking with a walker, and he's even like kind of like hunched over just because he's so uncomfortable.
Oh wow.
And apparently he actually had physio, like I think like a November, I think, but it was like an OHIP kind of coverage thing, so it was very limited. It was only like I think like 4 to 6 sessions.
So what came first, spine, hip, or knee?
I didn't ask, but I assume the spinal stenosis has been there for a while. The hip replacement, let me think. The hip replacement was 5 years ago. Okay. And then I think the knee came shortly after.
Yep. My guess would be spine, hip, knee. So that's interesting. So What are his, so you were mentioning that his challenges would be mobility.
Hmm.
Okay, so he's working with a walker. What kind of function does he have? Is he able to climb stairs, sit to stand?
Sit to stand, very uncomfortable. He kind of just like falls. Stairs, he's trying to like avoid it. Just because again, like his leg, he's having a hard time lifting the leg. So even things like seated marching, he was having like trouble with.
Very interesting. So spinal stenosis, has he had any fusion done?
I don't think so. He didn't mention it.
Okay. So what's your guess on the main muscle that he's having some challenges with?
Quad? No.
Psoas, I would think. Activating hip flexion. I would say psoas because the psoas is attached at L2 to L5 and attaches on the femur. So it goes right through the pelvis. So it would influence spinal, or it would influence hip flexion, spine flexion, and breathing because it attaches just below the insertion point of the diaphragm. So one of the things I would suggest, without knowing the rest of his history, I'll just couch my answer saying that is I would take a look at how he's breathing, whether he breathes through his nose exclusively or whether he's a mouth breather. I would look at his posture while he's breathing to see, is he a diaphragmatic breather or is he an apical breather? And then I would look at the strength of his psoas muscle to see whether it is constantly short and on to some degree, or whether he knows how to let it go. And looking at that partnership between diaphragm, pelvic floor, and psoas through the center of his body. And then also looking at his rotational ability. So with spinal stenosis, we already know that he doesn't have great circulation through that area. Nutrients aren't getting to the bone, and that could be part of the breathing concern. And also, he could have very limited motion at that T12L1 region, which would mean that rotation would be limited. That breathing, of course, would be limited. And then anything else that attaches through there would also affect its function. So as a prime hip flexor would be affected as well. That would indicate, that would kind of point to the problem that he has lifting his leg, doing that hip flexion, seated hip flexion, and also the sit to stand, and also the stairs. So it all kind of feeds in there a little bit. I think like the GERD issue you were talking about, going right to the root cause. And oftentimes we don't realize that the root cause is the fact that we don't have thoracic mobility. There's no breathing happening there. There's no rotation or side flexion happening there. And it's really common with people who have pain and people who've had multiple surgeries that their ability to breathe well is really inhibited. So I would probably step back way, 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 way back and just work on breathing to see if you can coach that diaphragmatic breathing and get him to let go of his belly, let go of his pelvic floor, keep neck and shoulders out of the breathing situation for sure. And then there's some other really interesting ways of trying to activate and then turn off psoas. So showing him how to activate and turn off diaphragm and pelvic floor and transversus abdominis and obliques, that partnership you have to work on. And then does he actually turn off the psoas, or does it have a resting tension, which is causing low back and hip irritation at the same time? That would be my thought, but I don't know if anyone else has any other ideas.
I would also just look at his glutes, like just simple things like getting him standing and just can he take his leg back behind him? Can he extend his hip back? His leg
Exactly.
back? Yeah. Because I
Yeah.
think anything else, like you wouldn't want to do bridging or any of that because his hips are in flexion. And again, you're probably relying heavily on the psoas, like Angela's saying, for that. So rather do things in standing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It sounds like his psoas could actually be too active, and so it's exhausted. So it tests weak, but it's not really weak. It's just on 99.9% of the time.
Yeah, the poor thing's tired.
Tired. It's really tired. So that phasic movement of standing on his 2 feet and just exploring balance ranges,
Mm-hmm.
and then like Elise was saying, just walking backward, holding on to a wall or a bar or a countertop. Can he actually let his psoas go and activate the opposite muscle group in glute max and see what happens? Because if you use glute max, you effectively shut down the hip flexors. And I would guess if you had him palpate his glute max, it's probably not a lot going on there. Possibly.
And I guess that's one struggle because these are virtual.
Yeah, but the lovely thing is about virtual that we've noticed is that people's body awareness increases because you're asking them for feedback.
Ah, interesting. Right? Yeah.
So all of a sudden they have to put their fingers on their bum and they're like, but I've never felt my bum before. We're like, great, perfect. Or you've got to take your socks off. What's happening with your toes? How come you are having difficulty balancing? So they're learning about their bodies in very different ways. Or like Elise was saying, you know, having them do that weight shifting left to right, and can they feel glute med and glute max working to help them with their balance? Or do they even have any movement in the rib cage when they breathe? So, and you can watch chest and shoulders pretty easily. So taking them through a bit of a breathing meditation and then just some simple activation exercises can work really well. There's a simple one to do where you just have your clients sit on the edge of a chair and they just rock forward and backward slightly. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can feel my glutes. And then can they actually tighten one bum cheek and then tighten the other bum cheek? Can they squeeze both and let them go? So working on body awareness is sometimes a fun and funny thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I find like it's especially interesting with like seniors because they're like, oh, I've been dealing with this thing for so long.
Of course you have.
Yeah.
So they don't believe that it ever can change. That's what I get a
Oh
lot.
my gosh. Well, that was like another person I was working with. Poor thing. She's so fed up. And honestly, I could tell from like the first moment she signed on because she's just like, so you're a kinesiologist. What do you do? How is that different from anything else? And I was just like, clearly you've been to a lot of people. You're kind of frustrated.
She's coming out of the gate rolling up her sleeves already and she doesn't even know you.
Yeah. She was like ready for a fight. No. She was nice, but it's just like she's like, oh, I've done this and I've done that. I'm so frustrated. And at the end, she was just like, you know, like on the sad side, she's like, oh, it's just, you know, I'm sorry, I've just dealt with so much and blah blah blah. So I'm just like, oh, it's okay.
The other thing I was going to say is like if you're doing any kind of seated stuff, I would have him sitting up higher. So like probably put him on a couple of pillows so he doesn't have as much hip flexion too. Like it might change. He might find it easier to activate his glutes then and things too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's also like the hip replacement that I was trying to like also be mindful of.
How long was it though? It was 5 years ago.
Yeah. It was a long time ago.
Don't have to worry about it.
Oh no? Okay.
No.
Okay.
Mhm.
So yeah, the clinic stuff has been very interesting. I feel like there's always some interesting characters. And a lot of times it's just like, one woman who always attends my lectures, she I did a one-on-one with her, and she was just like, she was having a lot of trouble with squats. And I don't remember what was the issue, but I remember I picked up on something. I was like, oh hey, like what if you do it this way? And all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, I've been doing squats my whole life. Turns out I've been doing them wrong. Oh my God. I was like,
That's what I love about what we do, though.
yeah. Or like last month I did a whole bunch of lectures on the heart and how it works. And then today, one of the one-on-ones, she was just like, oh, it was really, I'm actually really glad you did it, because I just did a stress test. So it was nice to know like what all this stuff means when the doctor didn't just sound like complete gibberish.
Oh, fantastic. That's really great. It's a lot of fun when you can actually look at the test results and it makes complete sense. Oh, that's really good. That's really good. What have been some of your favorite clients to work with, Haley?
I really like working with people who have multiple sclerosis
Oh, neat.
or spinal cord injury. It's just nice to see all their small successes they have
Mhm.
each week and how excited they get when they can, say, lift 2 pounds or something. So that's really nice.
Yeah.
I think working with those type of populations definitely opens my mind a bit to realize that they have a lot less mobility than I do, and they come every day and they're always super happy and excited to come and exercise. So kind of teaches you not to take so much things for granted, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. At least what has been one of your favorite clients to work with? That would be hard to figure it out, right?
It's pretty hard to pick.
It's hard. I'm trying to think of your client load going,
Oh, who's been some of my favorites?
You've
I
had
don't know.
some interest. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. Yeah, I've had some interesting clients. I've worked with some of my clients for like 10 years. So
Yeah.
yeah. Who would be?
You've had some
Oh,
people that have had interesting stories about breast cancer. You've had, we've worked with clients together that have been really interesting, that have just kind of gotten older over time and their mobility has changed over time. We worked with that one sculptor for many years, where I think 4 or 5 of us worked together with him over the years.
yeah.
And he was a lot of fun. And it was a bit of a game to try and get him to exercise and to come up with all kinds of very interesting exercises around his home just to keep him engaged, because he was so challenging to keep focused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have some clients that are like, pretty motivated themselves and do things regularly. And then you have others that you have to be really creative and keep them engaged and going.
Yeah. We've shared clients who you come to their home and they show you their last 2 or 3 workouts, and you think that's amazing. Like they've gone ahead and done it on their own, and you didn't have to cajole them and bribe them and push them and fuss at them to do their exercises, which has been what we probably, or what I more commonly see than not. So
Some of the stuff that I find harder is actually not so much the like physical, it's the psychological.
yeah.
Like one client that I'm actually working with right now is very like, she's doing her exercise every single day, and except for maybe one day a week. And also doing, so like we're talking like she's on the bike for 30 minutes. She does probably a 30-minute weight program at least. Maybe it's between 30 and 40 minutes probably. And then she's also going on some days, she goes for walks too. So she was lately telling me how she's really tired.
Really?
And she's also talking to me a bit about her weight, like, which is not like she's not overweight, I wouldn't say, but she wants to be more toned or feel better about herself and stuff. And so I actually find her quite challenging right now, because it's not just about like the fit, it's not about getting her to do her exercises. Sometimes, like, sure, she's picky. She wants to do certain exercises and not do some of the others. So I have to be creative in terms of, because she needs to be doing the ones that she doesn't want to do. Obviously, those are the harder ones sometimes.
Exactly.
So I get creative, and that's, but I don't find that too bad. The hard part is for me, like talking to her, like I tell her, like, okay, so you're tired. So maybe, you don't necessarily need to be doing like 2 bouts of cardio in a day. Like we'll start there. If you walk one day, you don't have to be going on the bike. But then she says to me, oh, I feel guilty. And so it's like, it's some of that psychological stuff that I actually find harder. And even as far as like her eating and things goes, like she seems like she knows sort of what her problem is with her eating. At least she says she knows. So then we try and discuss that. And, it's even trying to get, her to make small changes, or to, she just goes, oh, I just have to do it. Like, I know what I have to do. I just have to do it. So that stuff to me sometimes is actually the harder part, rather than the actual figuring out what exercise to do.
Yeah, I would agree for sure.
It's the coaching.
Yeah. Did you find a good motivational interviewing resource that you liked?
I just have my eye on those books. I haven't bought them yet. I was gonna buy 1 or 2 of them and take a look at them. Yeah, I mean, I've done some like motivational interviewing, like work through the diabetes courses and stuff that I've taken a bit. But I feel like it's like something that you can just, I don't know, you can always be better at. It's not easy to do.
Yeah, oh, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Well, thank you for this, everybody. Again, we've blown by 8 o'clock. It's so easy to do. Did you have any other questions or anything else you wanted to chat about? No, that's enough for one night. All right, well, I'll post this in the group, and I'll put in a little bit of detail just to mention a few of the things that we spoke about. And if there's any other topics or any other presenters that you think we should address or bring on board, just drop it into the group, because I'm looking for direction for our Monday meetups and trying to think about who we might bring on. And I may see if I can reach out to some of our professors and talk with them a little bit about their view on their kin programs, their view on the profession. I think it might be time to speak to some of them and just talk to them in general about the profession, talk to them about some of the questions they're getting from students and how they're seeing the profession from the academic side, because that's such a different look than what we have after we're out moving around in the world for a little while.
I think that would be very beneficial.
All right, I will call up some friends and say, come on the show, let's talk and see what we can find out. All right, everybody, have a great week, and we'll see you next
If you can
Monday.
get Stuart McGill.
Yeah, I could do that. Elise, I could do that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you could, I was joking.
No, I could do that.
I think it would be entertaining.
It would be very entertaining.
After taking his lectures, yeah, they're entertaining. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, there's 3 of us who went to Waterloo here in the crowd.
Was he still there when you were there, Haley? Were you taking courses from him?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, did Haley take courses from him? Yeah.
Oh, you did?
I
Okay.
went to Waterloo, yeah.
So just as
Well,
he was finishing up.
Yeah, I was gonna say he just retired, I guess. So that's
Yeah. Very interesting. All right. Okay, we'll see what I can do. All right, everyone, have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Angela.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.